Somewhere in a frozen forest, a group of people is standing around a small body. It's a funeral, a child has died, and they start to sing. On the other side of the planet, there's a jungle that's never seen snow, a completely different people, a language nobody in that frozen forest could ever understand. No roads between them, no trade, nothing. They don't even know the other group exists. And those people are about to walk into a fight, spears in hand, faces painted. And right before they go, they sing too. One group is burying their dead. The other is getting ready to kill. Two moments that couldn't be more opposite. Two groups that never once touched, and both of them reach for the same exact thing: sound, made on purpose, shaped into a pattern. Now, do that everywhere. Every island stuck out in the middle of the ocean, every tribe scattered across some desert, that one village on a mountain no outsider ever bothered to climb. Check all of them. Every single one made music. Not some of them, not most of them, all of them. Nobody taught them how. Nobody carried it from one place to the next. There was never a meeting where humans sat down and agreed this should exist. And here's the thing that should stick with you. Almost none of them were doing it for fun. So what is this really? Why is a thing with no obvious point sitting inside every group of humans that ever lived, like it was already there, waiting long before anyone reached out and touched it? Let's get one thing straight first, because it changes the whole question. When you hear the word music today, you probably picture a song, something with a singer, a beat, a chorus playing out of a speaker while you do the dishes. Wipe that image. That's a tiny recent corner of what this actually is. The thing we're talking about is older and stranger and much wider than that. It's a mother humming 3 notes over and over until her baby stops crying. It's a line of men dragging a boat up a beach, shouting the same word on the same beat so the whole thing moves at once. It's a circle of people clapping and stamping in the dark until they lose track of where they end, and the person next to them begins. It's a woman wailing over a body in a way that rises and falls like a melody. None of that needs a stage. Some of it doesn't even need words. It's just sound, organized, deliberate, made together. That's the real thing. And once you see it that way, you start noticing it everywhere, doing jobs you never knew it was doing. So here's the question that actually matters. Not who invented it. We'll get to why that question is basically a dead end, but why it keeps showing up no matter where you look. Because think about how strange that is. Nearly everything humans do everywhere, they do because it keeps them alive. You eat because you starve if you don't. You build shelter because you freeze if you don't. You learn to speak because you can't survive alone. Every universal human behavior has an obvious payoff sitting underneath it. Music doesn't seem to have one. You can't eat it. It won't keep you warm. It won't stop a predator. By every rule we use to explain why humans do anything, music should be rare, a hobby a few cultures stumbled into and most never bothered with. Instead, it's the opposite. It's one of the most universal things our entire species does. So either the rule is wrong or music is doing something we're not seeing. And it turns out it's the second one. To find it, you have to go back further than you think. Not back before speakers or radios, back before words. Back to a version of human that couldn't yet say a full sentence. And this is where the first surprise hits, because most people assume talking came first and music got bolted on later, like a decoration we invented once we had spare time. The evidence leans the other way. A lot of researchers now think we were making music before we could properly speak, that the humming, the melody, the rise and fall of a voice came first, and the words got layered in on top afterward. Sit with what that means. Music isn't something language gave birth to. If anything, it's closer to the other way around, which means music was never sitting on top of what makes us human. It was underneath it the whole time. And the clearest place you can still watch that happen is with a baby. Every parent on Earth, without being told, without copying anyone, does the same strange thing when a baby is upset. The voice changes. It goes soft. It climbs high, it starts rising and falling in this slow, sing-song shape that sounds almost nothing like normal talking. And here's where it stops being a nice idea and turns into something you can measure. Researchers recorded these voices across 21 different societies, hunter-gatherers, farmers, city dwellers, groups with nothing in common, then played the clips to more than 50,000 people spread across 187 countries, and asked one thing: is this person singing to a baby or to an adult. People nailed it, over and over across languages they'd never heard. From cultures they knew nothing about, strangers could pick out the sound of a human soothing an infant. And it runs the other direction too. Babies calm down to lullabies from foreign cultures, tunes from the far side of the planet they've never once encountered. So the very first conversation any human ever has, the first time one mind reaches another, isn't done with language. It's done with music. That mother isn't performing. She has no idea she's doing the same thing every human who ever lived has done. She's just trying to get her kid to sleep. But one piece of the answer is already lying in the open. Now here's the part that makes the whole thing click. The reason a species would need this so badly in the first place. Somewhere along the line, humans got smart enough to do something no other animal really can. We became able to think about ourselves. To know we're a self, separate from everyone else. To picture next year. And to understand, with total clarity, that one day we are going to die. Sit in that because it's heavier than it sounds. The same brain that made us clever enough to run the planet also handed us something almost unbearable. We're the only creatures who move through life knowing the end is coming. That knowledge could break a person. It could seal every human inside their own skull alone with the same terrifying fact. Something had to push back, something strong enough to reach across the gap between one mind and another and pull a group of frightened, self-aware people back together into something that could stand each other and survive. And that something was music. When you sing with other people, when you move to one beat, the wall between you and them goes thin. For a few minutes, you stop being one scared person alone in your head and you become part of something bigger than yourself. That's not decoration. That's a counterweight to the loneliest thing our species ever learned. Music showed up exactly where we needed it most. And once you see it as the thing that binds people through their hardest moments, you start finding it doing exactly that everywhere. And the deeper you dig, the more it stacks up, until the idea that music is just entertainment starts to look absurd. Start at the grave. Go to the west of Ireland a couple hundred years ago. A woman steps forward, sometimes a stranger, often paid for it, and begins to wail over the body. They had a name for her. Bean Chawant, the keening woman. This wailing wasn't just crying. It had shape. It rose and fell. It repeated. It wove the dead person's name and their family line and words spoken directly to the corpse in between long, wordless cries. It was so improvised, so alive in the moment that almost nobody ever managed to write a full one down. And here's what it was for. In a community where people weren't supposed to fall apart in public, the keening woman fell apart first, on purpose, out loud, and that gave everyone else permission to finally grieve. She carried the first wave so the others could follow. Now watch that same job appear on the far side of the world, with no possible connection. In the villages of Upper Egypt, women lament the dead in a form called Aidaid. And this isn't decades old, it's thousands of years old, stretching back more than 5 millennia. Echoing funeral texts from the age of the pharaohs. There's a tomb wall from around 1400 BCE, the tomb of a man named Ramos, covered in carved figures of women mid-wail, arms flung up, and modern lamenters in the same region still make those same sounds. Move across to Lebanon, and you find Nadab, funeral singing still alive today, led by men and women who improvise poetry over folk melodies. Move to the wider Arab world and you find the Nadabat, professional mourning women, called to the house the moment someone dies, exactly like the Irish keeners, with no line of contact between them ever. And here's a detail that should stop you. In the Middle East, the same rippling ululation, the zaghart, is used at funerals and at weddings both. The identical shaped sound carrying a community through its worst day and its best one. This is not a party trick. This is a species that reaches for organized sound at the exact edge of death, over and over, everywhere on its own. And notice what keeps happening to it. Again and again, the people in power tried to stamp this out and couldn't. The Catholic Church branded Irish keening a backward, pagan thing and leaned on it for generations, until by the 1950s it was nearly gone, though real recordings of it still sit in a Dublin archive. Early Islamic authorities condemned the wailing women as rebellion against God's will and moved to ban them. Later you'll see Christian missionaries silence an entire Arctic singing tradition, and a European government outlaw it in the tavernas. Think about what it means that this keeps taking official force to suppress and keeps surviving anyway. You don't need laws to stamp out a hobby. You need them to stamp out something people cannot stop doing. Then take a completely different problem, one with nothing to do with grief, and watch the same tool solve it. Hard labor. Picture a job too big for one person, hauling a massive load, dragging a boat, pulling an anchor no single man can move. Timing is everything. If everyone pulls at a different moment, nothing shifts and people get hurt. Pull together, on one beat, and the impossible thing slides. So how do you get 10 exhausted people to move as one body? You don't shout orders, you sing. That's what a sea shanty actually was, not entertainment, a machine for synchronizing muscle. The word only surfaces in the middle of the 1800s, when ships got bigger and crews got smaller and the timing had to be perfect. One man calls a line, everyone answers on the pull, and the same trick got invented over and over by people who never met. A ship's doctor named Thomas Winterbottom, working the coast of Sierra Leone in the 1790s, wrote down what he watched. Rowers singing the entire time, one man singing a line, all the others closing it with a chorus, a small drum holding them together. On American plantations and later in prison farms, enslaved workers and chain gangs used the very same shape, one leader improvising a line, the crew answering back, every body swinging on the beat. And someone studying those songs caught the giveaway. The speed of the song tracked the speed of the work, not the mood of the singer. The music was there to serve the task, but those same enslaved people show you something even sharper because for them, song wasn't only a way to move together, it was a weapon and a map. It was illegal to teach them to read or write, so knowledge had to travel another way. Inside melody. And along the routes of the Underground Railroad, spirituals carried coded instructions, when to run, which way to go, where the danger was, hidden inside what sounded, to any listening overseer, like harmless church songs. Wade in the water, told escapees to move through the river so the dogs would lose their scent. Harriet Tubman, the woman they called Moses, is said to have used "Go down, Moses" itself as a signal that she had arrived, and it was time. Now historians are careful here. Because it all lived in oral tradition, the exact codes are hard to pin down and scholars still argue over how far the practice went. But the deeper point isn't in dispute. A people stripped of every tool, forbidden even to read, poured their survival, their directions, their hope, and their defiance into song. Because song was the one thing that couldn't be confiscated. Again, not entertainment, escape. Now push it one more step, from surviving the work to surviving the world itself. Before there was writing, and for most of human history there was none, everything a group knew lived in one place only: human heads. Which plants would kill you? Where the water was when the rivers dried. The route the herds took every year. And human heads leak. You can't remember what you ate 3 days ago. So how did entire peoples carry a lifetime of life or death knowledge and hand it down without losing a word? They set it to rhythm. They wrapped it in a chant, a melody, a beat, because information locked into a tune is dramatically harder to forget than the same words said flat. And those knowledge songs were usually aimed at something bigger than memory. In the dry American Southwest, Hopi communities chant specifically to call the rain their crops need to live. In Tunisia, there's a rain ritual called Omektanu, old enough that its roots run back into ancient Berber and Phoenician tradition, where during a drought children parade a wooden figure through the streets, singing their pleas to the sky. Some African societies took it so seriously that a king who couldn't deliver rain could be blamed for it and killed. On the American plains, the Mandan sang and danced before the buffalo hunt, their voices imitating the animal, thanking it in advance for the food it was about to give. Nobody in these scenes is performing. Every one of them is using organized sound to reach for the thing they need most: the harvest, the hunt, the rain, survival itself. And here's where it gets older than any of that. Older than you're probably expecting, because eventually people didn't just sing, they built things to make the sound with. While survival was still a daily fight. Go to the Yellow River Valley in central China and dig into a village called Jiahu, lived in 9,000 years ago, thousands of years before there was a China, before writing, before bronze. In the graves there, archaeologists found flutes. Not fragments, complete, playable flutes, carved from the wing bones of the red-crowned crane, drilled with as many as 8 finger holes. And they didn't just look at them. They played one. After 9,000 years of silence, A sound came back out of it. When they analyzed the notes, the thing was tuned, close to the same do-re-mi scale you'd hum today, and next to one hole, whoever made it had drilled a tiny extra hole to correct a single note that sat slightly off pitch. Think about that. 9,000 years ago, someone made a flute, heard that one note was wrong, and fixed it. That's not noise to pass the time. That's a person who already understood music deeply enough to be bothered by a flaw in it, and the archaeologists point out the giveaway. These were carved from durable bone, not the easy bamboo of later flutes, which tells you they mattered, that they were kept and valued, not idle toys. They were found in graves, most likely played by shamans in ritual. Even at the very dawn of instruments, the sound is doing a job, and jiahu isn't even the oldest trace. Go back much further into caves in southern Germany, holy fells, Geisenklösterle, and you find flutes carved from bird bone and mammoth ivory around 40,000 years ago. Older than farming, older than the first villages, older than jiahu by an almost unimaginable stretch. One was shaped from the wing bone of a griffin vulture. That one was too fragile to play. So a researcher built a copy from the same kind of bone and blew into it, and out came a sound no human had made in 40,000 years. Now stack the two ideas together. The instruments we can still play are 9,000 years old. The ones we can only hold are 40,000. And the singing, the humming, the wailing, the chanting has to be older than every flute because you don't carve a precise musical tool before you've spent a very long time already making music with the instrument you were born with. Your own voice. We just can't dig that part up. Sound doesn't fossilize. And when a tradition keeps the singing itself alive, unbroken, you can hear straight down into that depth. In India, the chanting of the Samaveda, the Veda of melody, may be the oldest organized music anywhere. Set down more than 3,000 years ago, its verses meant to be sung, not spoken. And here's the staggering part. It was never allowed to become just ink on a page. It has been passed mouth to mouth, teacher to student, with hand gestures marking each note, in an unbroken chain for thousands of years, which means the melody a priest sings at dawn today is, as near as we can tell, the same melody sung at dawn 3,000 years ago. Not a reconstruction. A living thread reaching back to the Bronze Age. And it was never for amusement, each pattern tied to a ritual, a time of day, a force of nature to be honored. Sound treated as the very thing that holds the cosmos in balance. And the deeper you look, the clearer it gets that this was never about pretty noise. The sound was doing something to people, reaching straight into the nervous system. On the far side of the world, in the Arctic, Inuit women stand face to face and play katajak, throat singing, one of the oldest vocal forms there is. A rapid trade of sharp, guttural, breathed sounds passed back and forth until one of them laughs or runs out of air. On the surface, it looks like a game, and often that's exactly how it was used to pass the endless winter dark while the men were away hunting. But sit under the surface. Some accounts hold it once did shamanic work, the women imitating the spirits of animals and natural forces to sway a hunt happening miles away. It warmed their throats against a brutal cold. The looping, breathed rhythm could tip singers toward a trance. And when Christian missionaries decided the sound was sinful and banned it, it very nearly died, clawed back to life only in the 1980s when women started teaching their daughters again. Even the thing that looked most like play turns out to have deep roots holding it down. Now put the drum under all of it, because that's the piece that explains why any of this works on a human at all. Across Native American cultures, the drum isn't even called an instrument. It's called the heartbeat of the earth, and its pulse is meant to echo the pulse inside your own chest. A steady, repeating beat, a chant looping the same shape over and over, pulls people out of their own heads and into a shared, almost trance-like state, the focus sliding off the single person and onto the group. That's the machine. Finally out in the open. Sing together, move together, beat in time together, and separate people start to sync. Their attention, their feelings, even their breathing. A cluster of frightened individuals becomes one unit that can trust each other and act as one, and the brain pays you for it. It runs the pleasure and reward circuits while it happens, so we never stop. Generation after generation. You can even hear it turned into a weapon. War drums show up in the Egyptian, Greek, Roman, Mongol, and Aztec worlds, all landing on the same two uses without comparing notes. Rattle the enemy and move your own men as one. The Greeks marched their spear ranks to a beat so the line advanced together instead of straggling. At the Alamo, Santa Anna had his musicians play a piece called El Deguelo, a sound that told the defenders plainly that no mercy was coming. Robert E. Lee, who had bands played during the charge at Gettysburg, is supposed to have said that without music, there would be no armies. Same tool as the lullaby, aimed the other way. And it doesn't stop at moving armies. The same organized sound was trusted to do something even stranger, to heal. Among the Navajo, some of the most important ceremonies are literally called sings, or chants, and the sick person has a name inside them, the one sung over. A singer works through long, exact song cycles, sometimes for days and nights without a break, to pull a person back into hajho, balance, harmony, being right with the world, because sickness itself is understood as that balance having broken. There's a specific ceremony, the enemy way, aimed at people carrying the damage of violence, warriors haunted by what they saw and did, a sung treatment for the wound, war leaves on the mind, thousands of years before anyone coined a term for it. And on the other side of the planet, the Aboriginal peoples of Northern Australia play the didgeridoo, one of the oldest wind instruments on Earth, a length of eucalyptus hollowed out not by a carver, but by termites, tied deep into the dreamtime, the creation story itself. Its low drone was believed to carry messages into the spirit world and to settle disputes, to pull a community back toward peace. And here's a strange modern footnote. Doctors have found that playing it, the constant circular breathing it demands, genuinely helps with sleep apnea and asthma. A sound built for ceremony, quietly doing something real to the body all along. And then there's the kind of music that exists for one reason only, to let out something too big to hold inside. And even that, look closely, is survival of a different kind. In the south of Spain, flamenco was born among the most crushed people in Andalusia, the Roma, who had carried their music all the way from northwest India, alongside persecuted Muslims and Jews, communities steeped in poverty and exile. Its deepest form is called cante jondo, deep song, and it was never made for a stage. When a singer cracks into a quejío, that broken, rasping cry at the heart of it, that rough, straining voice, isn't a flaw. It's the sound of a soul laid bare. There's a whole family of these songs. The martinet, sung by blacksmiths with no instrument at all. The rhythm beaten out by the hammer falling on the anvil, the work itself becoming the music. And when it truly ignites, performer and audience fall into something the Spanish call duende. A dark, trance-like flood of emotion the poet Lorca said could only arrive when a person feels death standing close. The Roma who sing it call it a form of prayer. Not a show. A confrontation with being alive. Cross the Mediterranean to Greece, and you find the same impulse taking a shape that looks, from outside, like pure chaos. People smashing plates on the floor. It's easy to write off as drunken nonsense. It isn't. It grew out of rebetiko, the music of Greek refugees who poured out of Asia Minor in the 1920s, having lost their homes, their cities, their dead. They had nothing left but music, and it became the one place they could set their anguish down, and the breaking of a plate in that world was not showing off. When a singer poured their ruin into a song, shattering a plate at their feet was how you said, without a word, I feel that with you, a loud physical burst of shared emotion too big for applause. The Greeks have a word for the state that overflows into it, kephi, and it isn't happiness. It's a passion so full it has to break something to get out. Everyone in the room breaks together. Everyone is bound by the same release. And in Portugal, the same wound sings under a single untranslatable word, saudade, a longing for someone or something that may never come back. The music is called fado, from the Latin fatum, fate. And it grew in the poorest dockside quarters of Lisbon, in Alfama, among sailors' families who spent their lives watching men leave for the sea and not return. Everything about it is grief made into form. The singer in black, a shawl pulled tight like mourning, standing almost still, while the pear-shaped Portuguese guitar weeps under the voice. Nobody sings Fado to have a good time. They sing it because some ache of separation and fate is too heavy to carry silently, and turning it into sound is the only way to bear it. Flamenco, rebetiko, fado, three peoples, three corners of Europe, all of them poor, exiled, grieving, and all of them arriving, separately, at the same discovery. When a feeling is too vast for the body to hold, you give it to organized sound, and the sound holds it for you, and the people around you hold it with you. So step back and look at everything piled on the table now, because this is the whole case at once. A mother soothing a baby with a melody older than words. A keening woman in Ireland. A nadaba in the Arab world. A lamenter over a 5,000-year-old grave in Egypt, all wailing grief into shape so a community can survive a death. Sailors and enslaved people moving as one body on a beat, escaped slaves hiding a map to freedom inside a hymn, whole peoples singing their knowledge, their prayers, their reign, their hunt. A 9,000-year-old flute, tuned and corrected by a hand that cared whether one note was right. A 3,000-year unbroken chain of Vedic chant. Arctic women trading breath in the dark, drums turning a crowd into an army, chants pulling a sick mind back into balance, a didgeridoo carrying a plea for peace. And flamenco, rebetiko, and fado, the pure sound of grief and longing given somewhere to go. Different continents, different millennia, groups that never once touched, and every single one reaching for the same handful of things: rhythm, melody, repetition, sound made together. Not one of them thinks they're doing music. They'd never call these the same activity. But it is the same thing, surfacing again and again because the human brain is wired to respond to all of it at once, and wired to enjoy it so we keep coming back. That's why it's everywhere. Not because it spread from some first place, because the ingredients were already inside every human, and the same handful of needs kept dragging them out, which is why the question, who invented music, has no answer. There was no first musician. There was no moment somebody stood up and declared songs should exist now. It has no inventor because it wasn't invented, it grew in 1,000 places at once, out of 1,000 separate needs, all bending toward the same thing with nobody steering. And carving a flute out of bone, back when every hour went to staying alive, tells you exactly how much it had come to matter. Nobody spends that kind of time making a tool whose only output is sound, unless sound has already become one of the most important things in their world. And clearly, again and again, across every corner of the earth, it had. There's a twist worth sitting with here, though, because it stops this from being a fairy tale. If music were pure instinct, automatic, like a smile, it could never be lost. But it can be. There's a group in South America, the Northern Ashe, who at one point simply didn't have infant-directed song or dance. They still comforted their fussy babies. With funny faces and playful talk, they just didn't sing to them. The likely reason is quietly devastating. Somewhere back in their history, the group crashed to a tiny number of survivors, and in that bottleneck, a whole set of practices slipped through the cracks and never came back. Song, dance, even the ability to make fire, which tells you exactly what music is. It's not a reflex we can't help. It's more like fire, something so deep in us we reach for it almost everywhere, but still something that has to be kept alive and handed down, and can actually be dropped if the thread ever snaps. That's not a weaker kind of universal. It's a more human one, which brings us all the way back to that frozen forest and those painted warriors, and the thing that should feel different now. Music was never the entertainment we've turned it into. That part came last, not first. For almost all of human history, it was doing the heavy lifting, holding grief so a community could survive a death, steadying people before violence, calming the newborn, binding the frightened group, carrying the knowledge and the maps that kept people alive, moving bodies as one, reaching for the rain, mending a broken mind, and giving unbearable feelings somewhere to go. It was one of the main tools that let a species of self-aware, mortal, easily broken creatures actually survive being alive together. That's why it turned up in every corner of the earth with nobody spreading it and nobody inventing it, because the need was already inside us the moment we became human, and music was simply what that need sounded like out loud. So the next time some tune with no obvious point gets stuck in your head, and you catch yourself humming it for no reason at all, remember what it really is. It's the oldest thing we do. It was here before our words, and it's probably a big part of the reason we're still here to hum it.